And so I had a friend of mine who lost $3 million from a single lawsuit. And he was the guy that was mentoring me. I just have a great umbrella insurance policy. You'll be fine. And until it wiped out a huge chunk of his net worth. And I was like, well, maybe there's a smarter way to do this to make sure that I stay free and that I have more durable financial freedom. And that's when I started getting interested in things like asset protection and series LLCs and anonymity trusts, and making sure my estate planning was right.
This is Dana Samuelson with the American Gold Exchange. You're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast with Mike Cavagioni.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below. Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavagioni, and today's special guest is Scott Royal Smith. So Scott, I am super excited to have you on. I listened to you on Bigger Pockets podcast, like way back. It was Josh and Brandon. So it's pretty awesome to have you on my show now. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we're going to be talking about some pretty gnarly topics, but the very first question I want to ask you is a pretty important question. So we get to know you a little bit more. But if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us your story. Who is Scott Royal Smith?
Yeah, man. I was raised by a single mom back in Houston, Texas. And I grew up mowing yards, saving money, not really knowing why, but just somehow knew that was important. And when I got to law school, I bought my first piece of commercial real estate and auto repair business during my second year for like $10,000 in back taxes. And then was able to flip that to graduate from law school without any debt. And as I practice as a litigation attorney suing insurance companies, turns out they're great at collecting premiums and even better at denying coverage when things get expensive. I just continued to invest in real estate until I hit my own financial freedom and was able to do the things I always dreamed of doing. Go climb Mount Kilimanjaro, live in India and the Far East, and spend times out in Patagonia and do all those things. And what I realized really quickly was that, financial freedom is great. However, to maintain it, there's a lot of things that you need to put together. And so I had a friend of mine who lost $3 million from a single lawsuit. And he was the guy that was mentoring me. I just have a great umbrella insurance policy. You'll be fine. And until it wiped out a huge chunk of his net worth. And I was like, well, maybe there's a smarter way to do this to make sure that I stay free and that I have more durable financial freedom. And that's when I started getting interested in things like asset protection and series LLCs and anonymity trusts, and making sure my estate planning was right, and all my taxes and my deal pipeline, because I'd have inventory or assets turned and I needed to make sure I could replace that money. And that's how my company Royal Legal Solutions got started, is because I had to build all of these things for myself. And then it just naturally flowed that other people wanted to piggyback off of what I had built for myself. And there you go. 12 years later, that's what this company is now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And the fact that you decided to really start this after your mentor got slammed. So is it something specific that in that event that made you say, okay, because you already were an attorney, right? But made you want to switch completely over and just go strictly into asset protection. So when you saw that happen, did you start thinking about, okay, I have real estate assets, I have things I want to protect, right? So you started doing it for yourself, but what made you want to expand it to start helping other people?
Yeah, that was the wake-up call for me, is that I was listening to a bunch of other people who are real estate investors. And so the real estate investors would know, and they're just saying have an umbrella insurance policy and whatnot. And I was like, okay, maybe that's all I really need. And remember, I'm busy hustling, buying real estate. I'm not thinking through all of the complications of the legal stuff. I was like, how many properties can I get? And that was just a wake-up call to say, hey, I need to think about the asset protection. I need to think about the estate planning. I need to think about more strategic tax. What is the exact deal I need to be buying next? What is my deal pipeline going to be? And then that shifted it for me. And now it's to make it much more durable, repeatable, boring. But that's really what I want money to be in my life. I want money to be very boring in my life because the point is the road trip. It's not the gas in the car. It's you just need gas to go on the road trip of what the fun is that's out there. And after you have anything that you've accomplished in your life, I'm sure, Mike, that you've hit some relative success in real estate, what draws you to want to teach other people or help them? I think it's just like a natural part that we say, hey, this is
Yeah,
actually
you want to give something back, right? Because you've gotten so much from it, right? So you want to be able to give back to the people that have helped you and pay it forward, help others.
yeah, I think that's just like a natural thing. Like for me, it's the experience of a life that everybody always said was possible, but every time that I tried to get there, it felt more like a dream, right? That it wasn't really whatever people were telling me was like, it's like that. But it's this kind of life, this kind of lifestyle with real estate, with everything running smoothly as across all the sectors that need to be there, make it where I have peace of mind in my life and give me a life experience that I think is truly exceptional, even from people that have much higher net worths than me. I've met billionaires that are constantly worried about their money all the time. And I'm like, who's more free? Is the billionaire more free than me? Because it looks like golden handcuffs. If you
Yeah,
don't figure
that's
out
a
how to
great
do this
point.
stuff right, you can get rich and still be trapped in the game.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty powerful if you think about just the way that you put it, because yeah, you could be a billionaire. And if you're constantly worried about potentially losing your money or things going wrong or things going under, and what happens if that, you look at all these variables, right? And you're right. Like, where is the freedom there, right? When you're constantly worried about, am I going to be able to keep all my money? So that's a very good point. Now, getting into that, for the folks that are listening to this show right now that are active real estate investors that are out there hustling and bustling just like you were, but they got the blinders on like you did, and they're not thinking about things like this, what would you say to them if you wanted to start looking at asset protection, right? Like true asset protection to protect you from lawsuits. How would you approach somebody that's in the grind, in the trenches, just trying to make it happen, and they're not really focusing on that? How would you get their attention to say, hey, you should really start considering this? Or actually, even better question, when should someone start considering asset protection?
So the moment to start considering asset protection is the moment that you would say, would I cry if I lost it?
Okay, I like that.
Because if that's true, then it means that you care about protecting what you have. And then it just turns into the question of what's appropriate for wherever you're at, or whatever you're doing. For some people, it's great. A single LLC might be sufficient. Okay, but I have 5 single family homes. What should I do? It's too expensive for me to form 5 LLCs, and maintain all those things, and too complicated. Great. Then use a series LLC. So you can have an infinitely expandable company that will cost you nothing more as you expand. I can't do that because I live in California and they're going to tax the hell out of me. Great. We'll use a Delaware statutory trust. But I also have some apartments and I have some single family homes. Great. Moosh them together. Use a series LLC for all of your single family homes and then use LLCs for all of your commercial property. But I also own a business. Great. Then set up a separate LLC for your business. And if it's making over $50,000 a year, then have it taxed as an S corporation so you can avoid self-employment taxes. So each scenario has a predictable solution associated with it. And depending upon the size, like the number of the assets and what type they are, can depend upon what will be the particulars of which structure is going to be most efficient and effective for financing purposes and protection purposes.
Okay, yeah, right on. So yeah, everyone has a unique situation, right? And whatever your situation is, there's different ways to go about at your asset protection, right? And yeah, so actually some stuff I learned there too. Like I didn't know that obviously because I haven't really looked into a series LLC, but how you can keep expanding on that. That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's ideal for the single family home investor
Yeah.
because it's typically I run into is your margins are so small in single family homes that you actually need something that will allow you to expand your structure for free with having a single bank account, single tax return, single set of books. And that way, for each property that you're acquire, you can simply buy a property in your personal name, get the traditional financing for your first 10, or you get the cheap financing, deed that property into a land trust that's owned by the child series of your series LLC. And bada bing, bada boom, you've created anonymity of the ownership of the asset. You can leave the existing indebtedness in place, and it's compartmentalized for liability purposes. So if anybody sues you, they can't get to any of your assets. If they sue any one of your assets, they can get to that asset, but they can't get to any of the other assets, and they can't get to you. And this is a way that you're able to make it such that you have privacy and anonymity, so it doesn't look like you're a good target to be sued. And if the worst case scenario possible happens, you lose little to nothing, which is why it's so durable for your financial freedom to approach things strategically in this way.
Yeah, and strategic is the right word, right? For those that are listening right now that are, I guess, newer real estate investors, you might have one or two deals up your sleeve and you're looking at more. That's probably a really good route for you to look at if you're looking to keep buying more single family homes. I've switched over to multifamily, right? I focus more on the LP side right now, although I did just start doing some stuff as a GP and raising capital. So that's been a pretty fun experience so far. But yeah, so that's some great information to know. And it actually makes me feel a lot more comfortable when it comes to when you're looking at protecting yourself. Where's that going to come from? How are you going to actually do it the right way? And that's the right way to do it. So Scott, he knows what he's talking about here. Speaking about knowing what you talk about, you also are a real estate investor, right? So this isn't just something that you started doing as a passion project. This started off as a need, right? You were running into issues yourself, like we pointed out earlier. So I want to ask you personally, Scott, for you yourself, what kind of real estate assets do you currently invest in? Or actually, where did you start and where are you now?
I said, like, my first property I bought during law school, that was a commercial building, and I bought an active business with it. And
Went
then
went right into the fire.
yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. It was 10K and I knew I could resell it for 15. So I said, cool, worst case scenario, I make a little bit of money, but it actually turned out to be way better, which is great. Those are always the deals that I love. I win before I start. And old Robert Kiyosaki taught me that way back in the day from Rich Dad Poor Dad. Super important to make sure to win before you start. And then there was single family homes. And then I scaled into that first. And then as I started to help more people be able to accomplish what I had built for myself, then I started getting introduced to a lot more comfortability with all different kinds of assets, from apartments to commercial buildings to land to different types of syndication investments. Over time, what's happened is that we built a vault of education on royallegalsolutions.com. If you click in the top right-hand corner, that section called the vault, and have 11 ebooks, a couple hundred hours of videos, and where I teach about each different type of asset class and what do you need to do for each one, for asset protection, estate planning, the tax, different types of insurance needs, etc. That I'll go into there. But now my life is prioritized towards surfing in other people's wakes that are much more invested inside of investing. Like, they live it day in, day out. I'm mountain biking most of the time and climbing mountains and traveling and doing stuff that I want to do with my life. Net worth is about 10 million, and I have about a 15% return on my portfolio and pay almost nothing in taxes. And that's because of the syndication investments that I'm involved in. But syndications and surfing in other people's wakes and letting them make money by making sure that your money is going to be taken care of appropriately, and vetting those people and making sure that those assets are really boring, safe assets, that those operators have been in up cycles and down cycles, hopefully, that they're people of strong character, that you've met them, you know them, and you diversify. And then money doesn't become like a thing for you. It just becomes, it's like gas. Who cares about gas? You care about like the road trip, right? And that's what I keep emphasizing for people, is your investing is not your life. It's your life right now because you're not free yet. Once you get free and you can actually feel into the safety of being free, because your asset protection, your estate planning, your tax, your insurance, and your deal pipeline is solidified, then all of a sudden what you're going to find is that, holy smokes, now I got to focus on living. And then there just happens to be this thing called money that I'd use, but it actually doesn't really help me all
it's
that
a
much.
tool, and people need to look at it as a tool. right? It's a tool that you use in life to keep to go on this journey. But I like the way you described that and the way you put it, right? The road trip, right? It's not about the gas, it's about the trip itself, right? It's about the journey. And I think that's something a lot of people need to hear because yeah, you might be grinding right now and you're like, man, it's when am I going to hit that sweet spot where I can actually be financially independent and go live my life? But at the same time, you want to make sure you do it the right way because like you described earlier, you can have somebody that gets there and all of a sudden they weren't protected the right way, they get sued, and now you're starting back over, right? So you don't want nobody to be able to push the reset button on you. You want to be able to keep going. Okay, awesome. Now, besides the asset protection piece and then what you do in real estate, I know one of the other things you talk about is how people can use their retirement accounts, right, to actively invest in real estate. And I've had people come on and talk about this before, but I'm really curious as to what your thoughts are on it, especially from your background as a lawyer, right? And what your thoughts are with people using like their self-directed IRAs and things like that to purchase real estate. Because a lot of folks that have been working a W-2 for a very long time might not realize that they have this chunk of cash if they've been investing in their 401k and IRA. They might not realize that they have something available that they could maybe change up a little bit and use it as an option to purchase real estate. So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So it's typically the job you have now offers you some type of IRA or 401k, but any other job that you've previously been in has those types of accounts that are set up for you. And what you can do is take all of those accounts and roll them into what's called a self-directed, like a solo 401k or a self-directed IRA. And then you can self-manage all those investments. Instead of having to just invest in the stock market, you can invest it in all different kinds of things. One of those things happens to be real estate. Now, I think it's a great thing to do if you have money that's locked up inside a retirement account. It's like already, that's great. You want it to get into something that's high performing and going to give you a great IRR. Probably something. There's a lot of great deals that are out there that are like that. Anybody who is trying to accomplish this like tax deferred type of investing in a vehicle that's similar but hasn't yet placed the money into the retirement account, I recommend using a private foundation. And you can protect up to 30% of your income per year by using a private foundation. And you can essentially pay yourself a director's wage when you desire to essentially take the money out of the private foundation. But the private foundation basically works like a super IRA. So if you're saying, great, I'm really interested in retirement, fantastic. You can use those retirement accounts. You might want to use a private foundation on top of it. If you are somebody I want to get to financial freedom in 7 years and I am 35, great. You probably want to use a private foundation to protect your money and grow it inside of the private foundation as much as you can, because it'll reduce your current tax liability. It'll grow tax free and you'll have access to it on your horizon for financial freedom. But you want to be growing money tax free. You want to not pay tax on the money as it comes in, and you want to grow tax free any way you can. You got to do that.
Absolutely. So Scott, this is the first time I've heard somebody bring up a private foundation. So if you could, can we get into a little bit more detail about how somebody would get into that and start that up? And if you have a self-directed IRA and you want to go pull that money out early, you're going to wind up paying a penalty, right? So what does it look like with a private foundation? Is it something that you can withdraw from whenever you want? What does that look like?
So it's non-taxable when it goes in, just like a retirement and IRA would be, right? And then it just becomes taxable to you when you pay yourself, when you withdraw it from the private foundation. Just has changed up the terminology, right? Like our contribution to a private foundation is called a charitable donation. Our withdrawal from the private foundation is called a director's wage, because you're pay yourself a salary as a director, right? And then it's taxable to you at that point. Just like when you pull money out of your retirement account, you pay taxes on it at that point, if it's traditional IRA, right? The difference is IRAs are capped at a certain dollar amount with your contribution, but the private foundations is a percentage of your AGI. So it's up to 30% of your AGI. So once you can protect your money, you protect your wealth using your series LLC, for example, then you use your anonymous trust to be able to hide your ownership of the companies, hide the ownership of the assets. You use a separate operating company to protect yourself personally, run your businesses through it, help save you on self-employment tax. And you're just left with all this money at the end of the day. And that's when you need like depreciation from real estate. You need private foundation to be able to shelter the cash from taxes. You might want to use retirement accounts if your horizon for financial freedom is a retirement age. Or for most people, they're trying to get there in 3 to 5 years, not 25 years. And so then it's using knowledgeable CPAs and PAs and CFOs to be able to help you strategize, how am I going to get to this financial freedom number within the next 3 to 7 years? And then it's who has all the tools. And that's what we specialize in, is how to do all of the structuring and the strategic tax planning and all of that stuff together, and using advanced types of techniques that typically are reserved for the super rich, but we use them for everybody now, making over 150K a year, such as the private foundation.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the way you describe that and all the folks involved, you're putting pretty much together like this dream team. Who should that consist of as you go down this path in real estate, and you're like, you want to put all the right people in the room? Who are those people that you need to have in the room to get to this point where you are protecting everything the right way and you're sheltering yourself from taxes the right way? Who are the folks that you need to have in the room?
Yeah, so that's the whole crux, is who's in the right room. How do they know how to talk to each other? Because that's where most people run into problems right now. Is they say, I got a CPA and a lawyer and an insurance guy, but they all fight with each other. And I'm left in the middle having to figure it all out, actually. And I don't really know. They're the ones that are professionals, but they can't figure it out how it's supposed to work. So this is what the difference is, right? Is what I say is that you should only hire professionals and professional teams that make money the same way you make money. If you're in business, they need to be knowing and how to run your business. If you're a real estate investor or other type of investor, they need to be investors, because there's one thing that's, hey, I know some theory. There's another thing that says I've actually put it into practice and know how that it's all supposed to work together. Because the truth is that you need some knowledge that's about asset protection. Those are attorneys. You need some knowledge about estate planning. That's a different set of attorneys. You have some knowledge that comes into tax filing. Those are accountants. They need tax strategy. That's a different kind of accountant, the CPA. Actually, that tax strategy needs to be investment type specific. Now that's even a more specialized type of CPA. Okay, but then I also want to be able to know, like, how much money do I need to put in which type of investment to hit my cash flow net worth and to reduce my taxes, to be able to balance those appropriately. That's a CFO type role that comes into it. Then you need some type of insurance strategy, typically for life insurance, until your net worth gets up above a certain level. Otherwise, just you want to have the right kind of insurance in place to take care, be your first line of defense if anything goes wrong. And then you need a deal pipeline, because you need to know who's going to be essentially like an investment strategist to, let's say, what's the right kind of deal pipeline with the right kinds of deals for you to be able to make decisions on. So essentially, these are all of the components that you need if you're going to build a wealth building company. And most people aren't entrepreneurs skilled enough to build a wealth building company from scratch. And that's why I built Royal Legal Solutions, is because we can make you the CEO of your own wealth building company that we built and manage and maintain for you on a fractionalized basis, if you're making over 150K a year.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, so is that something that you and your team provide? Like, you provide that team right there. You have the right people in the room to do what you need to do to help that investor build that wealth building business, right?
Yeah. It's the team. It's the track record of what are the appropriate like strategy, the tools that have to go into it for the tax planning, portfolio analysis, and investment tools, the meeting regularity, right? That's your drumbeat to be able to manage and have oversight. What's the support structure need to be for whenever you have questions about what goes on? All of those pieces of what I spent the last 12 years building for myself.
Yeah.
Because this is what I needed. And then as I've been able to help over 2,000 clients over that period of time, well, not everyone does everything, right? Some of them just need like little things here or there, because some people already have most of it all built and they just had a couple of gaps they needed filled. That's fine too. Is where everything got and has been like refined out to say, great, this is how this works in a repeatable manner. And we take on anywhere between 10 to 20 new clients a month.
Yeah, that's amazing, Scott. So he got me thinking a lot right now because I was one of those guys that was always like, oh, I'm going to do everything myself. And I got myself into a little bit of trouble like 2 years ago, but that wasn't too much fun. And now I have a tax guy on my team who's also actually a lawyer. So that's good. But I feel like I'm not where I need to be right now. I think this is a really good conversation. Okay. So basically, what you've built over the last 12 years, obviously from your own self need, is a place where investors can connect all those dots together and have all those right people in the room all in one package, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It's to
Awesome.
take
So
like the 12 years of learning that I had to do
yeah.
and build it for somebody inside of 6 weeks.
All right. Fantastic. So within a 6 week span, you can have somebody where they need to be at and out the door.
Yeah, you'll be out the door, and then over the course of the year, you'll work with the team to get trained in how to use all of this stuff that got built, which is why we have the different types of regularity with the meeting sets between what quarterly meetings that are going to happen with the CPA, twice a year meetings with the attorney team, direct support to and communication with the paralegal team for any nuanced issues. And then you can just call it to meetings on demand and you don't pay anything extra to be able to learn. And then we have the vault that has hundreds of hours of videos and ebooks in it for you to be able to study on your own, to be able to learn how to do this thing with professional oversight and guidance along the way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So a great way for investors to protect themselves. Scott, that's really cool, man. And it's really good that it's a service that you offer based off of something you had to use for yourself. And it goes back to what you had mentioned earlier about making sure that you're hiring professionals that make money the same way that you do, because they've been there. They have that, they've lived that life, right? They know what it feels like to be on the other side. Okay, Scott, I want to transition this into something that I call the final round. It's where I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show, but it helps give us an idea of how you are a little bit under pressure, which I think you're going to do just fine. So if you're ready to go, we will get that party started.
Yeah, let's party down, brother.
All right, Scott, let's party on. Okay. What was that from? Wayne's World, right?
That's Wayne's
Party
World
on.
right there, bro.
Yeah. Right on. Okay. So, Scott, first question is, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made when it comes to your finance or business life?
Biggest mistake I ever made was trying to figure it out on my own. I would have been so much better off in life if I would have just followed the wisdom of people that already had what I wanted, had already walked the trail, and just did exactly what they said.
All right. Fantastic. Next question, and you'll see, Scott, these kind of tie into each other, is what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out?
It doesn't matter how much money you make. Life is just always about the same. After you cover off on food, water, shelter, and the basic necessities, it's all just relative levels of the same thing. That the only thing that really matters is having enough to support yourself and then having the kind of experience that you're really looking for, and then things won't get you much.
Man, I really like that answer right there. It's all money's relative, right? It's either more zeros or less zeros, but as long as you're covering those basic needs and taking care of yourself and your family, then really doesn't matter. So yeah, man, that's a great way to look at it. So, okay. Scott, the next question is, do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started out today? So let's say brand new investor, they just got their first deal, they're motivated, they're feeling on fire. What kind of tips or tricks or advice would you give them?
It would be to find out what the best practices are for whatever it is that you think you want to do. And then just do the best practices. That's it. You find the smartest people you can, find out what are the best practices among the smartest people that you can, and then just do that. You don't have to figure anything out.
I love it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Once you know what you got to do, just do it. So
yeah, wait until you master that. And then if you want to innovate something, innovate it. What you're going to find is that after that, you're going to say, I don't need to innovate anything. I'm going to spend a bunch of time and effort to get a 1% difference. And what's going to be here? So that's what I'm saying. It's not interesting. in the same way that you're like, oh, I'm creatively figuring out this thing, like you're in high school figuring out the next Apple business that you're going to start. If you want to be an adult, what adults do is actually just say, what are best practices? I'm just going to section a part of my life, pursue that as diligently and as focusedly as I can, because I want some type of end result. And I want to do that in a way that's efficient and effective.
Right on. I love that. I love that. You just keep it simple. Keep it simple. The final question that I have for you, Scott, of the final round, and I'm going to say, besides Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because you mentioned it earlier, but do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
Yeah. So I'd say like probably one of the best books that was like, there's my two favorite books. One was 4 Hour Work Week because it was old Tim Ferriss book, but it like started to combine this idea of how are we living and thinking, and then how does it impact the way in which that we're doing business? It's like business is an extension of your life. It's not separate from your life. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There's actually just life, and then work is a modality of life. Now you approach your life influences the way in which you approach what are you doing, trying to create inside of your businesses. And then there's another book called Living Untethered by Michael Singer. He's a yogi, but he's also a billionaire software developer. And that taught me a much deeper level about saying that, oh, actually, you can take this whole thing, you could take it to a much deeper level where you are in a place where everything that you're actually looking for in life, you can have like right here inside of this moment. And then the product of doing that is actually you end up with so much creativity, so much energy that you end up creating things that are more and better than you ever would have done by just sheer force of will. So I'd say that one is probably the biggest delta that I've read recently.
Awesome. And that was
Living Untethered by Michael Singer.
awesome. Awesome. Thank you for those recommendations. Those are great. 4 Hour Work Week is one that we've gotten on here often. I think Living Untethered, that's the first time someone's recommended that. So that's excellent. Okay, so Scott, that is it for the final round. It wasn't bad. It was pretty easy stuff. Sometimes people get stumped up on that mistake question. Now, that is it for the final round, like I said. However, I do have another question I want to ask you, and this is going to be the most important question I ask you of this entire interview, right? Because people are listening and they're like, man, okay, Mike's rambling, but Scott's putting out some great information, right? Some stuff I really want to learn more about. And that's pretty much it. So where can people find more information about you, what you're all about? Can you share your website with us? Any social media profiles people could follow? And we'll make sure we have all that in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So my social media, if you want to follow what I'm personally doing and traveling around the world and living the life of my dreams, that's at on IG. It's on Scott Loves Life. And then the website is royallegalsolutions.com. You're going to see a video on royallegalsolutions.com. Watch that video. It's on the homepage. It's going to show you everything that you need to do to be able to put together a wealth building company. What does that look like? Whether you have us build it for you or not, it's going to give you the blueprint of here's what you're actually needing to go build. And then you're also going to be able to see in the top right-hand corner of that website page something called the vault. You're going to want to get access to the vault and start watching the educational content. It's the very best information to be able to put together to help leverage my time so I don't have to have the same conversation with people. It's what we use to train our staff. That's used to train our attorneys and everybody. And so all of that information is available to you, just like it is available to my staff. And if you feel like it's something there's a productive conversation to have, then you can schedule a meeting on the homepage of the website. You're going to speak directly to a member of the paralegal team. They don't use any salespeople. If you just need something that's really small, they're going to be able to help take care of you. If there's a deeper conversation there about building together multiple of these pillars and tying together more strategically everything that you have going on, then we're going to be able to have that conversation. And there's some mechanisms to do there. But so really great education, either through the vault, totally free. The video on the homepage is going to give you the blueprint of exactly what you need to do to build your wealth building company and to reach durable financial freedom. You're going to be able to talk to my paralegal team for free if you schedule a meeting there. And ultimately, there's no excuse not to go get educated. So if you're not willing to go get educated, there's nothing I can do to help you. If you're willing to put in the effort to go get educated, then I'll be able to take your timeline to freedom from 15 to 20 years, typically down to 3 to 7.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's one of the biggest things for anybody that wants to get into anything is that education piece, right? Because you could jump right into it, but you're still going to get educated. It just might be the hard way. So
I spent millions of dollars and years of my life getting educated the hard way.
Yeah. And now you have a way to educate people so that they don't have to pay millions of dollars themselves. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's like
Awesome. All right.
that's right.
So Scott, I'm going to make sure, like I said, I'm going to make sure I have those links in the show notes to make it easy for people to just copy and paste or click away. For my listeners, the only thing I ask is please don't do it if you're driving right now. Make sure you wait till you get to your destination and then go check out Scott's stuff. But Scott, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I want to ask you, like, to close things out, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah, the most important thing to do is to take some small action. Yeah. The biggest mistake people do is that they don't take action on it, and then years will go by, especially in this area of life of putting together all these structures and everything. So the most important thing to do, take some action, either sign up for a meeting or get inside of the vault. When you do that, you're going to be part of like our network. We're going to help you hold accountability to staying engaged to the learning. So that way you might be sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker and where you're at with like your motivation, but we're going to help you to be at least to be able to stay engaged with moving forward with these important areas of your life. But you have to take action. So even take the smallest action right now as soon as you can, and then let us help you to be able to walk those small steps to be able to accelerate your path on this journey.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Take small steps right now. Just take some type of action. Okay. I think that's a message a lot of people needed to hear today, Scott. I really appreciate it. I seriously, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time today to have this conversation with me and share your knowledge with my listeners. I know I got a lot out of just talking to you. So I'm really hoping that, actually not hoping, I know my listeners got a lot out of it too. So again, thank you so much, man, for taking the time out today to join us and impart your knowledge upon us.
That's such a pleasure, Mike. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your attention.
Yeah, Scott, thank you again. And hey, I also want to thank all of my listeners. I want to thank you also very much for joining me and our special guest, Scott Royal Smith, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you liked what you heard today, go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you specifically liked about today's episode with Scott. Aloha from Hawaii and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.